With the success of World War II taking the big screen by storm, the variety of films that reflect this particular war have given us some of the best war movies of all time. In 2001, with the help of Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks to lead the project, and with a platform provided by HBO, was a miniseries before its time, an unparalleled way in experiencing the classic episodic TV show. Aside from that, it brought out the brilliance and how much better the war film genre can be, an innovative sense of how the brutality of war can be hell and how a brotherhood could be formed. Band of Brothers. Tonight, boot camp will be the course at hand. We are introduced to the group of characters we will come to know as Easy Company. Tonight, we start our watch along series on the Band of Brothers, Episode 1, entitled Currahee. This is a Comic Talkers production, and you were listening to Just Four Flicks. What's going on, guys? It's your boy Patty B. With me, as always, is this guy we call Mr. B Dog, Mr. Brandon. What's going on, man? How you doing tonight?
I'm actually excited. This is a series I've been asking you to do for a while
Yeah,
now.
you have.
For it's like we've talked about throughout the month. We've had Mary on, who is a history graduate. She's majored in history. I'm also majoring in history. I focus on more U.S. history and military history. Um, and this was actually one of the things that actually got me into World War II and wanting to study more about it is the Band of Brothers. This is a 2001 miniseries that was put out by HBO.
Mhm.
And it's a pretty star-studded cast. Uh,
Very.
and some of them weren't big names at the time, but if you hear their names now, you know exactly who we're talking about. And we'll go over that throughout the episodes. Each episode we're going to be going over, so there's 10 episodes. So the first one we are going to focus around Currahee, um, which is, of course, the training of the airborne troopers, everything like that. But let's let's go over a little bit of highlights about this. These two episodes for episode 1 and 2 aired on September 9th, 2001.
It's just crazy to think about, right? Time. Time is a crazy, crazy factor, and
And
it's
that's what we were talking about before for how old we were at the time.
and
It was really weird. But to go over some of the facts of the story, this series is based around Stephen A. Ambrose's book, Band of Brothers, which was released in 1992, which focuses around Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division of the United States Army and their journey during World War II. Try saying that 5 times fast, but
it sounded like a tongue twister.
I know. But here's some fun notes before we get started with this. World War II, this was really the first time you saw airborne really be used in combat.
Yeah.
But did you know America does not own the very first paratrooper drop
Do you
ever?
want me to like throw a random country out there and see if
What
it's
country do you think? And it's during the same war, but it's a different country. And
can I go allies or Axis?
it's
Or is it what?
it's Axis.
I'm thinking Italy.
No,
Okay. I don't know then.
it is German.
Dude,
Germany,
I wanted to say Germany. You made it seem
Germany,
like it was gonna be
Germany did it in 1940
okay.
and used it during the invasions of Denmark and Norway.
The way you were asking that question, it led up to like, oh, it should be something not as simple, but
Yeah.
it anyway,
But
thank
of course we wanted to adapt it because we also saw the unique abilities with them. We're going to see some of the stories when the episodes start, but just to give you a kind of a hint, the first U.S. paratrooper drop was on November 8th, 1942, during Operation Torch, which was the invasion of North Africa. So what we're going to do, fans, just like our typical watch alongs.
yep.
3, 2, 1. We're going to go ahead and start. Um, Throughout, we're going to be talking a little bit about things that we see. I have some history notes. I know Pat's got some production notes with him, and we're just going to go over it. We're going to talk about the scenes. We're going to talk about things like that. Um, and we're going to have fun with this. This is something, it's going to be really exciting to go ahead and start doing this. So, Patty B, count us down.
Okay. Before we start this, I promise you guys, that I will try to be as good as I can with the time cues. I will try to let you know where we are in the episode if you are listening only, just to keep you in tune with everything that's going on. But without further ado, if you are ready, I am ready. We shall do it. We should go three, two, one, play. The iconic HBO original.
You don't say that very
No,
often anymore.
you don't. It always reminds me of Sopranos, personally, but that is what it is. I love these, by the way, these little short intros of the actual veterans and everything. I think it makes this feel so more
Well,
real
these
or
are
surreal, you know what I mean?
yeah, like these are
Yeah.
some of the real soldiers that are portrayed in this show, and
Like,
really see that. But you got to remember when these were recorded quite a ways in advance before the
yeah.
show premiered.
It's just
This is where I really love this, and this is where a big history point comes up. Like we
Mhm.
said, Airborne was a very experimental unit. It
Yeah.
wasn't really something that was like it was proven by the German army, but it wasn't
Yeah.
really known. So America starts to adapt it. And here's the unique part of it. You could not be drafted into Airborne. You had to
You
volunteer.
had Oh, wait.
You volunteered to go in.
But then you also have to make it through a certain training. Did they have their own
Exactly.
special training, I'm assuming, right?
Yes. And that's what we'll talk about here in a
Yeah,
little
we'll
bit.
get through.
This is the unique fact of it. 6,000, about 6,000 men entered this camp that we're going to go to, which is Camp Toccoa. 80% of them were weeded out. And the only reason that they did this too is you got to remember at that point, money was a big thing too. They ended up getting like a $50 raise on their checks, which was pretty big at the time. And you got to look at it this way: it was pretty much like hazardous pay, like it was like a hazardous job pay. You're
Mhm.
pretty much going into a job that we don't know the outcomes of what's going to happen, what's not. So that's why they people did it, and that's how they got people to volunteer to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like we said, some actually did it for the experience and going into war with people they could trust, and the
Mhm.
brave soldiers that go into this, because this was not an easy unit just to go in and just be a part of. This was a
Yeah.
very tough unit.
Well, there's a lot of resources behind it too, right? I mean,
Well, you
that's like
gotta,
what you're saying, like all the money that's being spent.
yeah. Well, you gotta,
There's a big program in the war.
well, you gotta remember, like at this time, you had Rangers, but they weren't as what they're known today. You had Navy SEAL. You didn't have Navy SEALs. You didn't have a lot of these special units. These were your special units.
Well, and my thing too is like even besides like the paratroopers and everything, wasn't aerial fighting a lot more common in this war? And there was some aerial fighting in World
World
War
War
One,
One.
but not as big as World War Two, it
Well, you
seems
got
like.
to remember
Mostly
World
because
War.
aviation was so more advanced at that point
Yeah,
too, right?
yeah, like aviation, like this war was really mainly fight. It was well, there was Navy battles too. It was kind of really one of the only wars where you really saw it on all fronts. You saw it up in the air, you saw it on the ground, and you saw it on the sea.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty big thing. Like aviation was heavy in this war, you know, and that's why this was so experimental because we didn't know what was going on. And by the way, this is one of my favorite parts of the whole episodes when they had the little intro. I
I
like
was just gonna say, I mean, it's a nice intro and all. A little too long for my taste, but I also like
you
I you
know
could
I'm
say
a
the same
sucker for
thing.
scores, so scores for this is just amazing. Um, I actually had the whole soundtrack.
Mhm.
Much I really love the score to this. Um,
Let's see real quick. Who does score this? I can find that out real quick.
well, you dude, all you have to do is ask me because I have it right here because I was
Oh, you
that
you
today.
bring yeah, Brainiac
Michael
over here.
Kamen and the London Metropolitan Orchestra.
Okay. Part one, Currahee. I like how
I want to question you on this. I want to see what you think. Do you think this was a smart move? Because here's the thing: we don't start off with our training. We get a little snippet to June 4th.
yeah, that's 2 days before D-Day.
So you got to remember, June 4th was originally going to be the drop. Like they were getting prepared because June 5th, early in the morning, is when they were going to do their drop.
Okay.
and it was postponed, which we're going to hear here in a second. But you got to remember, during this time, they were pretty much preparing to get to. Do you think it was a smart move for them to start on June 4th and then go back?
So I've always liked that in certain movies. If they can make it work, then great. If you got there's certain times when it's not used properly, but I think in this case it is because it's like, okay, we're especially with shows nowadays, a lot of them do that because it's like, oh, they want you to start off with something that's gonna be happening way later on, but they want you to be not confused in a way, but like, okay, be on the lookout for this because there's a reason why we're playing this first, right? So I think it's kind of cool how we get to see these characters already developed, but we're in this episode, we're gonna kind of rewind and see how they actually are developed.
Right.
So
So at this point, they're already prepared, ready to go, and they just got informed that they are delaying. And Pat, do you remember why they delayed?
I do not.
It's because of weather issues. You got
Okay.
to remember, during this time, it's a very dangerous thing to go up there in the air. It's very, and also on the sea, you got to remember that too. So they delayed them for 24 hours. They put them on stand down for 24 hours.
So they're all
There's
like
Michael
stuck
Fass. That's why I said there's a lot of big name actresses. You got Michael Fassbender
young.
here.
He's so young.
Yeah, he is. You this is this is the first time you really get to see really the main person of the story, Lieutenant Dick Winters. Um, who is the main is who's really the main focus, and you're going to see him with
Yeah.
this. Which I love like I love their characters. And I love what their people because when you really think about it, and that's what I was listening to a Band of Brothers podcast where they did the 20-year anniversary and they did episode by episode with different actors.
Hmm.
Show and Dixon was one of them that came on, and he talked about like how he came about coming up with this character, but in reality, Winters and Dixon was so totally different from each other, and they portray it well here.
And you're talking about the act like that they had the actor, they had Ron Livingston and Damian Lewis, sorry. Damian Lewis on.
Yeah, but here, yeah, and that's the thing is that when they talked about it, when you really listen to how Winters and Dixon was, they actually were like totally different people. So they actually like, but they were always buddies. They were
Mhm.
always close to each other.
I love Ron Livingston, by the way. I think he was already well established because, well, not well established, but I mean,
He was in Office Space, right?
he did Office Space right before this. I mean,
Yeah,
think about it. Office Space came out in 99, I think.
and this was 2000.
2000? Yeah. No, yeah, it came out in 99. Um, yeah, and this is right after. This is probably one of the first things Damian Lewis is really into, isn't it?
Um, yeah, yeah, this is one of them that kind of put him on the map a little bit as an
Well, I
actor.
know this is one of the first things I saw him in.
Yeah, like
'Cause-
I this is what made me like him as an actor.
Yeah.
I think Damian Lewis is really good at what he does. Um, yeah, he's 53 now.
Uh-huh.
So he was probably early 30s, maybe late 20s during this.
Looks like he was in a show called the Foresight Saga in 2002, which is right around this time.
Yep. And
Let's see.
here's our
Oh,
first
he was in a bunch of other stuff too, way before that.
and here's our first appearance of at this time, Lieutenant Sobel,
Oh man.
David Swimmer. Now, do you know the story about what happened with David Swimmer on this? I'm curious.
I feel like you've briefly told me about it, but I'll let you retell it.
Yeah, so they actually isolated him for most of the shots for this. They
Yeah.
kept him away from all the other cast because there was a sense of trying to make like a sense
Tension.
of resent, yeah, like a
Yeah,
sense
you
of
want
resentment to him as well. And how Sobel's actually portrayed in this whole story is really accurate or close to being accurate. Like I'd probably put it like close to 95% accurate in this. And he was this is malarkey.
slang for bullshit. Man, what a poor last name that is. Man, Donnie
Well,
Wahlberg.
yeah,
You think about it, Donnie Wahlberg did Sixth Sense right before this too. It's crazy.
Donnie Wahlberg. Yeah.
Oh, one thing I really want to get to is this man. I being in the first episode like this at the peak of Friends because what Friends ended in 2003.
Mhm.
So this guy is still filming he's still Ross. Like, and it's just crazy to me. Could you imagine, living at that time and, let's just say you were an adult, but back then and you were watching this and like, oh my God, look, Ross is on this war program that they're making. But it's just so I think he's really well rounded. I think a lot of people, see David Schwimmer and immediately think of Ross. But I mean, I don't know if you've gotten a chance to see it. The whole the you know how FX does those docu-series. They did one on the OJ Simpson trial, and he plays Robert Kardashian,
Yeah.
and he's very good. And I recommend you guys take a look at that. But anyway,
So at this point, what happened is that Sobel is trying to find any infractions on him, and he pretty much got him. He pretty much found issues on every single person. Now, Donnie Wahlberg is or at the time, he's just becoming a sergeant at this point, Sergeant Lipton. Um, but
he's
they're going to about to pretty much go run up Currahee at this point. But this is a great scene to me because this is where he's pretty much making them all fall out, getting ready to run, and there's a guy standing in there not wanting to go. You got to remember, a lot of people were weeded out quick.
well, I like how it's called Easy Company, and it's far from it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just so ironic.
Here's one of the first runs that we see of Currahee.
And this is
Three,
another,
3 miles down.
yeah. Do not help that man.
And that's how he was, but it was like a sense of, in his eyes, he's trying to toughen him up, but in reality, you don't leave a man behind.
Well, like you were saying, like, could you imagine him saying while they're running up that hill, pivot, pivot,
Pivot. Um,
pivot.
um,
That's one thing I was gonna get at, and I'll point it out as we're watching this thing. And I don't think you may see it a little bit in this episode, but I feel like the more combat we see in this series, you're gonna see a lot of good camera work, I think. And one thing too is I don't know if you've watched from noticed. Well, I'm sure you've noticed from watching because you've seen it so many times. But the lighting, I like how they have certain lighting sets on it. Like
it's like a
like
grittier tone kind of thing.
exactly. And you see, like right now, it seems kind of warm just because
Training.
they're training. But I think once we get into those more battle episodes, you're gonna kind of see how it gets a lot darker, which I
And this
think is
is where
where.
I want to bring this up. I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but
Oh, you're fine.
this scene is very important to me. This is where you really start seeing why Winters is beloved and admired by his men compared to being Sobel, where Sobel is not admired.
Mhm.
Winters is down there with them. Winters is going to sit there and he's going to do everything with them. And Sobel, when they're in full gear uniform, where is he at? Standing above them,
Yep.
looking down on. And that's not how you get the admiration of your fellow men. You need to be there with them. You need to be in.
Well, that's how you gain their respect too, right? I mean, yeah, that's how you form that bond, especially if you're going to be going through combat with them too. Don't you want to be on a good rapport? But who would have been good in this? And maybe it's just me, and it also could have been scheduling conflicts, but I feel like they could have put Sean Astin in this thing.
Yeah, but you got to remember during this time what was going on.
Well, that's what I just said. You got to think about timing and scheduling conflicts. No, I that's why I said it, but um, man, he just hates
Hey,
him.
he just thank you, sir. I love this.
And just a little thing like that where he pops a joke, you see how all the rest of the guys laugh.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember it. So the guy who just they just made fun of, his name is Staff Sergeant Denver Bull Randall. which at this time he's not really a staff sergeant. Yeah, remember that. Here's the thing with this scene here. So they just got done with their night march
Hmm.
and they were directed not to drink from their canteens. Michael Fassbender's character, Burton P. Christensen.
Okay.
And so he did drink from his canteen. So now he's been ordered to go back and do all the miles that they were supposed to march. And now this is where I really like this with Sobel and Winters, because this is where you really see their sense of rivalry go against each other a little bit more.
Yeah. Man, this really makes me cringe at the army or at the food that they have to eat. Like respect to you. I'm not a picky eater, but I mean, I'd still probably eat it. But it just, man, there's a you'll see it later on, but there's a scene where they'll dish the food and it's like,
And so we're now finally get to see some of them like they're practicing their jobs.
So real quick too, doesn't that seem like that would hurt? I was thinking this earlier when I was watching this. Like, do they fall out onto sand or what is that? You know what I mean? Like,
That's sand that they're falling in, like they're jumping into, but they're
yeah,
to practice their landing because there is a certain way you're supposed to land when you go parachute. If you do it any other way, you take the chance of hurting yourself. Sometimes you can't permit it because sometimes it's the weather and things like that. But you try to do it at a certain way to keep your feet planted.
gotcha.
And so they're practicing that before they put them on a real plane to jump off. Shows you that their training wasn't just that simple.
I know. So they have to march up that hill and go back in 50 minutes.
Yeah, so actually, I actually have a note on that. It was actually less than that they were expected to do it in. Ready? Uh, it was actually, I believe it was 45 minutes. And that's how most of them, somewhat, were kind of weeded out too.
I would imagine. You can tell by this guy right here. Doesn't seem like it's gonna work out.
Well, you got to remember at this point, he's in full gear. And I like this scene too, because it shows you how much of them actually like have a lot of respect for each other and therefore
Yeah,
we'll run with you. We're up
they're
here.
gonna help him. Yeah, yeah.
And even though Sobel is hard on them, he's got the best records of them all. Easy Company's performing better, everything. Now, Sobel's promoted to captain
Hmm.
during this whole time, but Winters is also going to get a promotion. And again, so at this point, his commanding officer, um,
Man, that just makes me. I don't necessarily dislike, or I should say, I don't necessarily hate his character, but man, it kind of makes you think like he's
you don't think of him in a role like this. You
kind of a
don't.
prick. Yeah, yeah.
You got to remember, a lot of people did not respect Sobel at all.
Well, don't you think he abuses his power a little bit?
Well, yeah, it's not so much him abusing his power, but he's at the standard. If everybody doesn't get to this standard, then he has a problem. And so you got to remember, and we'll see this later in this episode, is how I want to say incompetent he was, but
Yeah.
how he wasn't good as a commander.
Hmm.
And we'll see that later on because there's going to be scenes that show that where it's like, yeah,
Yeah, it's almost like he was only good at disciplining them, right?
pretty much. That's how you have to look at it. Like,
Is that Simon Pegg right there on the side? Yeah, I think he just threw him the can of peaches.
I think so. I can't remember.
This is right here, or is he gonna give him a star?
Yeah.
It's right here where he gets. I, I thought this part right here is kind of a dickish move too, where he's like, "Hey, I was thinking of a nice meal for the guys." Like, "Oh, I'm thinking spaghetti." Oh
Well, you got
man.
to remember. So this again, why he did this is because it's that sense of it's like he views Winters as a threat. Like he views Winters as again somebody everybody else will listen to, but yeah, they won't listen to him.
Well, you can see that even when he was just talking, when Sobral was talking to his superior, how he seems kind of like not pleased what he was telling him about Damian Lewis's character, getting promoted, and you can tell he just wasn't thrilled about it,
Right.
which obviously is based on that rivalry or there's that tension between them both.
Right.
See, that spaghetti does not look
And
good.
that's what I was trying to look up here too. The guy who plays the colonel that does give them the promotions.
Hmm.
Um, I want to see if you know this. Did you know he was also in um, Saving Private Ryan?
Who?
The guy who was the colonel, his name is Dale Dye, Dye. He was one of the advisors to George C. Marshall when they were ordering to get Ryan out of there. But he's the colonel that just gave Sobel the captain rank and then told him. So yeah, so you got to remember something. That I agree. It's like I love that whole scene too. And he sits there and he goes, "They call this spaghetti." He goes, "No, it's noodles with ketchup."
They'll die. Yeah, yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm like 2 seconds behind you on that one.
Yeah, that's just army noodles with ketchup. It's just
For
so.
real.
But you got to remember, this was harsh environments. You're gonna have to deal with things like this on a regular basis.
That guy's holding his composure pretty well.
Yeah.
I must give it to him.
You know who plays Bull Randleman, right?
Who?
I want to see if you know what other movies he's in.
Bull Randleman.
That's that's the guy he was just telling him I have an ambulance down the way.
I gotta get a better look at him, honestly.
It's Michael Cudlitz or Cudlitz. He's in D3, the Mighty Ducks.
You said Michael Cudlitz?
Yeah. He's going to
Oh,
be
he's in the,
Lex Luthor.
he's in The Walking Dead.
He is in The Walking Dead. He's also going to be the new Lex Luthor. He he plays in a lot of roles that people
He's gonna be
forget.
the new Lex Luthor.
Yeah, he's going to be the next Lex Luthor, and in the shows, he's going to be in the
Oh,
super.
okay. Okay.
But I like this scene too. So they're actually going to go shoot, or pretty much if they have a successful jump, they get their wings. Don't you love that they're wearing football helmets?
I do. Wow, those are legit football helmets.
They are old football helmets.
Wow, look at the way those used to look back then. They had no face mask or nothing.
But I
They
think there
weren't.
was more laws or more rules to protect them.
I was gonna say there was no concussion protocols back then. Man, this would just obviously there's a reason why this is a volunteer type of position, right? Because only the fearless of the fearless kind of join something like this. Because
Well,
me personally, that's just crazy to have to join a plane.
you got to remember, that's what I was trying to
Concept
tell
of
you.
it.
Is like this
Yeah.
was a very, I wouldn't say underdeveloped, but it was a new thing. And when you go into something like this, you don't know
Okay.
how successful it's going to be. So we'll see that in episode 2 what the D-Day lands. So you got to remember that. But
Something like this was before its time, or do you think it was like, perfect timing for something like innovation or I don't know, and not innovation. What's the word?
it was,
Man,
I wouldn't say it was a new tool either, but I see what you're saying.
the invention of it
Yeah.
or the concept of it.
Yeah. Like we've had this beforehand, but this was never used in warfare. And so then they start using it warfare to kind of get behind enemy lines and do things like that. But so, like, if you stand at the door and don't do nothing, you're out of the airborne. It was a pretty legit thing. If you can't be willing to jump out of the plane, then you essentially don't have no business being.
Yeah, because that's why we're called the Airborne.
And you saw Sobel had a struggle with it. Now they're all partying because they got their wings. So
finally get to relax for once. He's mock he's mocking Sobro. That's so funny.
Oh, I
Man, where do I know him from?
the sergeant.
A young kid that was just making fun of him. Oh, George Luz, or played by Rick Gomez. Oh, he said the title.
Oh, you trying to do the Family Guy? Oh, he said the title. He said the title.
See? Just like I said, ladies and gents.
Now we're
Man.
gonna jump to a whole year in Camp McCall. Now, this is kind of their last camp before they were shipped off to Britain. And this is during a war game simulation. So this is where you really see Noble's inexperience in a battlefield conflict. You know, there's a fun fact about Winters. I want to see if you'd actually find this interesting. So, even though Sobel would take weekend passes away, Winters actually really didn't go out very much. He actually stayed there and studied because he knew what was at hand. That's why a lot more people respected him compared to others.
Mhm. So we're about 28 minutes, folks.
We got
Fortunately,
the
my app,
halfway mark. Okay.
I'm just trying to keep I'm trying to keep up with what I was saying earlier. It shows how much I've done it. First time in a half hour.
We've just been enjoying watching this episode. Now,
I know, right?
at this point, Winters is trying to tell Sobel this is a really bad move to go out in the open like this because this is a war game situation. Now, Pat, do you know much about war games and what it's all about?
I know that it's a two ring steel cage. You have three teams of three. Um,
No, not
uh, oh, is that the wrong war games?
yeah,
Oh, sorry.
wrong war games, bud. No, war games was a pretty much it's like a battlefield situation, but it's a situation. There's judges out there to kind of judge it, and Sobel makes a pretty risky call that in the war games pretty much kills most of his unit. It's how bad he is. And Winters warned him about this. Winters like, no, I wouldn't do that because you got this and this could happen. And they were like,
I think casting wise, the fact they put Ron Livingston as Lewis Nixon, like, I think he's perfect for that role.
well, that's what he said. And when I was listening to the podcast he was on, he actually said he stayed away from watching or doing anything with World War II stuff. And instead, he watched stuff like Civil War, World War One stuff, or try to read stuff on it. The reason is because during that time, that's who they looked up to. That's what they
Yeah.
thought was.
That makes sense, though. I mean, trying to prep for that role,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. You know, when I was younger and watched this series for the first time, it was always, for me, it was always the norm to skip this episode. Fact being, I was more into the whole warfare part of it, or the I wanted more action basically.
Yeah.
And I think watching this recently as an adult, I feel like I appreciate this episode a little bit more just because it kind of focuses more on character development and it kind of sets the tone for these people and who they are. And I guess kind of shows you how they are pre-war and
Mm-hmm.
how they might change throughout the course of the next 10 episodes.
Right.
So, I mean, it's definitely important for sure. I think, and that's just typical HBO. I think they do that with a lot of shows where like maybe the first episode of a season is just kind of like a tone setter. It's not very anything crazy really happens. I
It
know
sets up a lot
They
of.
did that with Game of Thrones a lot. Same thing with Sopranos.
Remember, this sets up a lot of things.
Well,
That
that's what I'm saying too. It's a table setter type of episode. Are they they're still in or no, did I
they're still in the U.S.
they still are okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I know they're gonna
we're
go
gonna go
over.
to England here shortly, but
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you know what's funny is Damian Lewis, whenever I see him, I automatically just think of his role in this. Because, like, movie wise,
He's
I
more
mean,
of a show guy. He's not
that's
really.
what I was just gonna say. He seems like more of a show guy.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I know he's in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but he's really only in it for like a scene. He's not even in it for that long. And that's just how all those Tarantino movies that'll have like, that oddball actor in it for, 10 minutes and that's it. Like putting Michael Fassbender again, same thing.
So now we're going to jump to September 6th, 1943, at the Brooklyn Naval Yard. Now, they are going to be shipped out at this point to England to prepare pretty much on the ongoing situation. Like, we're at this point in time, we're about 9 months away from D-Day actually happening.
Okay. Got you for 9 months, 9 months of playtime. Yeah. Dig it. You're like, oh God, don't do it right now.
Not right now, please.
You're like, please don't whip out the bone saw.
It's playtime.
Flamingos are mean.
Like, I know this isn't a big scene, but I like this shot, like how they are in the ship. And
Yeah,
really show you that their situation of them being transported.
it's so confined.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. It's like the swing shot, the Wes Anderson thing, where it's like it
Yeah.
goes to them, and then it goes to you. Then it goes, I mean, I know it's not Wes Anderson, but you know what I mean.
Well, that's a Martin Scorsese thing.
Yeah, he does that. Yep, yep, he does that a
He did
lot.
that in Goodfellas a lot.
A
That
lot.
whole bar scene where he's going from scene to scene.
Yeah, I can't get over the lighting, man. This episode seems like it's that warm tone, warm setting.
Yeah.
Uh, Everything's a little bit brighter, it seems like. But I can't wait to till when we get further on in this and like some of these infantry scenes and with explosions and stuff, the way it's like it seems like it's almost sped up a little bit, kind of like how they do in it's very, very similar to Saving Private Ryan, in my
Well, you
opinion.
got to
Like the
remember,
way
Saving
certain
Private Ryan was by the same people.
exactly. And that's exactly what it is. But I mean, it's just so crazy to be able to compare them both and see how wow, it's feels like the same thing.
And Dale died, the guy who raised the colonel here, in charge of them. You realize he's also one of their like coordinators. He's one of them that actually does like all like the little scenes. Like he's the one that actually helps them like choreograph some of the stuff. Or like this is what they would have done, or all this.
This is pretty cool.
And I like that even though the scene's really not big, it's a sense of you kind of see now they're in Alborn, England now, about a couple weeks after they got on the ship. This is where they'll
Airborne.
very much remain till the D-Day, and well, until they get prepared to go. Bayonet training.
Airborne, England. Alborn. It's in West Sussex, England. I was curious to see where that was exactly. Looks like it's South England.
I want to talk about this scene. Well, I thought now having you make me watch Bottle Rocket, I can never really not think there and think that the shooting scene with them. But this is what's interesting about them. They actually made them train with even captured like German weapons because at this point you're going to have to find ways to survive. And if you run it, and if like, and you'll see in the drop, they lose their weapons at points.
Hmm.
So sometimes they have to be prepared to take any gun they can or rifle they can to use. And so
Um,
here's the next set of war games and or situations, and this is this is by far one of my favorite funny. And this is what I also hate about this too. You see everybody else, and what is he wearing?
he's wearing
A
like a
bomber's
fur
jacket.
coat. Yeah, a bomber's jacket. Yeah,
And
that's part
everybody else is in his normal uniform. That's a good. I hate to say it this way. When you wear stuff like that, it's just like they say in Few Good Men, right? You're an instant target.
yeah, yeah. You're making it known that you're a step above everybody, right? Instead of working together, but in leading, you seems like he kind of shits on everyone else and then does what he's supposed to do.
And there's Simon Pegg too, so there's a better shot of Simon Pegg.
So crazy. That's Shaun of the Dead right there, bro.
That's before Shaun of the Dead too.
I know, but that's crazy.
Oh,
What
I love this scene. I love Lutz. Okay,
is...
do it, do it. Okay, this one's like, shh.
Did he join us? He thinks the major joined him.
Problem. It's just almost
Oh, that dog ain't just gonna honk.
by our fence. You get that goddamn food on the move. But it shows you how unprepared Sobel is to go into combat. This just
Yeah,
shows
he's
you how
lost, and they're not even in combat yet.
this is where you're going to see a lot of them pretty much not mutiny, but pretty much go up against Sobel and say, "I have no confidence in him."
None whatsoever.
And you see how Winters is really good with his men. That's the other. It's like
Yeah.
I said. I know we keep saying that, but this is the whole point of this episode.
He knows how to talk to him. He
He
knows
knows
how
how to be.
to relate, but also take action.
Yeah, I, I like this scene too. Riding on his bicycle.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm going the other
I
way.
like that. I like this cool. It's a cool shot because it's like a continuous shot.
Yeah,
I love that. That's what I love about this war. Or I love
I'd like to.
when
Hey,
they put this.
no, you captured me, and you can see Wonders just enjoys it. Hi, so and there comes the other.
I was gonna say one thing I like about the way this war is always portrayed on film is like the countryside of everything. Like it's beautiful. Like it just gives it a certain tone and feeling for it. And I just think it's in a way kind of peaceful, if that makes sense. Even though war is not peaceful. Um
Who gave you permission to cut down the fence? Major Horton. This fence. Major Horton is on leave in London. Get those cows out of here.
that guy looks he plays a bigger role later on in this, I think, too, right?
Mm, I can't remember on top of my head.
I can't either.
Now you're going to start seeing some of the NCOs or the non-commissioned officers really start losing competence in their leader, or more where they're going to step up. Now at this point, what happens is now Winters is being pretty much disciplined, or he's pretty much been threatened with court martial
Mhm.
by Sobel.
Good old Sobel doing Sobel stuff. That's so bull. Misspelled court martial. He should have said, sounds like someone has a case on the Mondays. He's like, man, they just gave him those TPS reports.
And so what he's being court-martialed for is that I guess he missed a latrine inspection.
I love the way their dialogue is bounces off each other.
Yeah,
Like it's very aggressive, but it's said so politely, or I should say more professionally. I guess that's the way it's supposed to be, especially in the military when you're talking to your superior. But especially with the tension between them both, it makes it even better, I think.
agreed.
God, I really don't like him now.
Yeah,
Oh.
Sobel's trying. It's at this point, it's trying to get him to, and he's pretty much saying like the punishment is this, or you can take request by court martial, and you can see Sobel just wants him to take the punishment. But
Yeah.
I love this scene because Winter goes, he takes the pen, he goes, "Can I borrow that?" and takes it. He takes it before he even asks the question and signs the paper for court martial. He'll take the court martial.
Kind of a big F you to him, right?
Oh, Winters also has no. It's like a sense of he has no respect for him either. So, and now you can see Sobel really like, oh crap, kind of thing.
Man, he's in a bunch of stuff too. I had his name earlier. He's in a bunch of stuff.
But this is the first time where it's like a sense of no confidence in Sobel. Like, not, and I keep on saying that, but these guys actually like sign a letter pretty much stating they have no confidence in him and they do not follow him into battle. And they pretty much are noted pretty much that he's pretty much court martialed, or now there's court martial with Winners. And so I'm gonna read I like him in this is because he states it as it is, Chip. He's not going to play games. I'm not going to follow this man into combat. We need to,
Make a stand and make it now.
yep, because if we don't, what's going to happen?
Shit is gonna hit fans. A lot of fans. Possibly propellers since they're in the airborne.
We're
Yeah.
going to go there.
Shit has hit the propeller. Got a date with Destiny. In easy company. I love that. I love that nickname, Easy Company. It's easy to say.
Mm-hmm.
No pun intended. It's easy. This is why he's so upset.
Yep, because he pretty much all these took it to their commanding colonel or commanding officer,
So he just kicked that guy out of his regiment.
pretty much.
Why do you, I'm curious as to why did he only kick that one guy out?
I, I I never understood that either.
For him, man. Like he's the odd man out of all six of those guys.
Well, one got bumped down in rank too.
Yeah. Well, that guy got kicked out of the regiment.
Well, he's transferred out of his.
Well, you know what I mean, though. Like they like he going somewhere else. That's cool. And he's getting all the respect from those guys. Like, hey, we're with you, as a little
Looks like
smirk.
I said, they'll follow Winters. They will not follow Sobel.
Dude, Winters is a badass.
And Sobel is just about to be told that he is not going
Yeah.
to be making the jump.
Basically getting demoted right here, right?
Well, it's not a sense of being demoted because he really isn't being demoted.
He's getting transferred last minute.
I kind of like the dark colors with this too. Like it's a darker, like
Yeah, seems kind of cozy. It's a really nice office, by the way.
so. Colonel Sink is the kind of like the main officer right now in charge of them currently. Is pretty much noting to Sobel that his talents are need to be used elsewhere right now in the war efforts, and he's been reassigned.
I'm reassigning you. He does a really good job here because it's like it, his character is kind of giving off that feeling of like like he's heartbroken because he was very invested into this whole thing, and like we talked about, it's just unfortunately everyone else didn't feel the same way about him. Not a good leader, but I think it was for the best. Obviously, we're gonna see that, but
Right.
and real quick too, is this the last time we see his character?
We see him a couple times.
Okay. About 52 minutes and
Mhm.
53 seconds.
So now we're just about a week out from the drops.
Hey, it's a British guy.
And there's their first appearance of Neil McDonough in this show. And you gotta so you gotta remember Luger's for them it was, and we'll see this in episode two more. American soldiers and not all that, but there was a lot of people wanting to go for artifacts during this one. A lot of people would take any artifacts they can get. Like you saw people take sand. There was people who took weapons. People took anything they could get.
Yeah. Luger's pretty cool though.
Yeah. So Neil McDonough comes in as the or as Lieutenant Lynn Buck Compton. Um,
You know what too is when I was getting prepped for this, when we were gonna record this, I completely forgot that Neil McDonough was in this, man. Whit Bass himself, dude.
awesome. So
Man, I love Neil McDonough. He's so
Neil
good.
McDonough is a very versatile actor.
He
He
is.
is, and he's very true to who he is. That's the other part I love about Neil McDonough.
It's crazy. He's in this show, and then he's also in Desperate Housewives.
Yep.
The Range. Walking Tall. Great in Walking Tall.
You want
Great.
me? You want me to tell you what's unique about this lieutenant that just came in?
What's that?
So I believe his name is Lieutenant Meehan. Meehan. Now, the guy who plays him is Jason O'Mara. Jason O'Mara has become one of the new voices of Batman himself.
Oh wow. Normandy. So this is the full planning of the Day of Days.
Yeah, so this is Meehan, or what was it, Lieutenant Meehan? That he and they're pretty much doing, yeah, they're planning. But see, this is how Winters was. Winters was very articulate. Let's make sure things are ready to go, everything. And they're about to start going over the plans with the Airborne.
Hmm.
Okay, Pat, here you go. Here's your good question for you. How many beaches were there that they invaded in D-Day?
How big is Normandy? Like, how big is that
I
beach?
can't tell you that because I'm not going to give it away. But I like these maps because they make them study it. Because at this point, if they don't, if one of them gets lost, or
They know their way around somewhat.
and exactly, and then on top of it, that's where Meehan is coming in and saying now that they need to also learn everybody else's jobs because in this case, we don't know what we're going into.
Hmm. And don't they all have different zones, like landing zones,
Some,
like that they're assigned to?
yeah, correct. Now,
As we know,
and
that
your
won't.
question is five.
5 beaches. That's a lot of beaches. It's a
Yeah,
lot of sand.
yeah, and that's what I said. It's a lot of beaches there.
A lot of sand.
Yeah.
A lot of castles to be made. The guy was just naming off all the stuff that's in their bag, and I got a little overwhelmed. That's a big list. A little
You got to
big.
remember, they go in
I know. I'm a little concerned about the 3-day rations, though. It doesn't seem like a whole lot of food they're giving.
because remember, you got to think at this point, their goal is to go in and pretty much take down objectives before the D-Day landings happen. So you got to remember when these guys go into battle, they happen during the night or pretty
Yeah, and then D-Day starts in the morning, doesn't it?
well. D-Day pretty much starts with them, and
Well,
then
yeah, but like the invasion of the beaches in the
yeah,
morning.
the amphibious invasion. Yes, that's yeah.
Good old Donnie Wahlberg. Not a big Donnie Wahlberg fan, if I'm being honest. I prefer Mark over Donnie, but what do you think?
I could take them or leave them.
Well,
I'm
obviously, Mark is the
I
more
actually prefer
familiar.
Donnie more. It's just because Mark is one of those actors that it gets to the point where you don't always know what he can and can't do, and sometimes his movies get annoying. Donnie, I've never really watched something of his that I don't really like,
Yeah,
and also too, I'm a big New Kids on the Block fan. I grew up with that, so hey,
look at you.
step by step.
I'm gonna step by step out of here. Keep saying that. Should have done your Yoda laugh right there. Man, he seems like the Joker.
Yeah,
Should call him Private. I should call you Private Joker.
no.
The great adventure for which you have trained for 2 years.
And they
Uh,
and they
I don't know
were
about
fed very well during this too.
they what?
They were fed very well.
And this kind of goes right to the beginning of this episode, right? This is pretty much where we left off.
Pretty much it's about where they are, yes. In the beginning of the show.
That first scene, first 5 minutes. You can see that some of them seem a little impatient, or I guess more anxious is the word for it. I mean,
Well,
I
you
would
gotta
be
remember
too if
every
you look at what you're getting into.
but not only that too, it's like they're ready. They're ready to go kind of
Yeah,
thing.
this is what it's all led up to, right? It's still crazy just having to mentally prepare for that,
Yeah.
especially for what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like the sense of having to go into a plane and paratroop behind enemy lines. Like that's just a crazy task at hand in the first place. What kind of letters that dude reading?
So this is what happens. This is a letter that he's pretty much informing that um Gurenir's brother passed away.
Mm, here we go. Day before, man. It's
Yeah.
all led up to this. Well, not quite, but we're getting there. We certainly are getting there.
June 5th, 1944. This is when they're about to start up Pottery Airfield. This is where we're about to start the invasion process. And it might be light outside, but you got to remember during this time, at this time, or like this, at this period of time where they're at right now, the time, not the time period, but the actual time,
Yeah.
it's still like 10 o'clock out there at night.
Like it they're so ready. Let me see your war face. So that's for if they get nauseous, the medicine.
Yeah. But you want me to tell you what the sad thing is? They actually made them drowsy.
No way.
Those pills were not really good. Now, the plane
Not
has to take off in her C-47s. Okay. Douglas C-47s. Pat, how many do you think they actually had on set?
How many of the 747s?
C-47s.
I don't know, these shots that they're about to have, I feel like they would have to have a lot. They only had four. What?
So all of them were all different angle shots.
Oh, they just meshed them together.
It was still great use of the tools they had. Give them props.
That's pretty cool. Are these the old school ones too that they used back in the day?
C-47s.
C-47s.
C-40 Douglas C-47 Skytrains.
Oh man. So they're taking off what time you think? This is the
Well,
afternoon.
this is about no, it's not afternoon. Remember, like I said, even though it's late, it's still pretty much late out. So for them, it's like 10 o'clock out there. For certain areas, it was different light and everything like that.
Okay.
Think of insomnia, okay? That's a good way to put it. You know how insomnia you have the light still and it's supposed to be like 12 o'clock at night?
Does it take place in Alaska?
Yeah. But you gotta remember I think it's the higher elevations and over it's like the lights are different out. So the sun is still kind of out there, but is it there? What? Because this is over the channel. So you gotta remember England's here, France is right here. And it's just that channel that they go across.
I love this last little shot when they're
Yeah.
all taking off. It's perfect. It's a perfect send off into the next episode.
Yep. The
And this music.
music's really good.
And
Like,
yeah.
we love this. And then the white and black stripes were actually for like artillery and stuff. So when they saw them down, like on their allied side, they would know that was theirs in some ways too.
Oh, okay. It's like a marking.
Mhm.
America.
No.
Frick yeah. That's so cool. Here it is, man.
As I said, it's really good how they've shot this. It's really well done. You can tell there so far has been a lot of work and really developing the show. And for good reason, because you know how much the budget was since it's kind of ending out here? You want me to tell you know how much that was they
I
have
want Okay, so I think I looked at this earlier. I want to say on average it was about 12.5 million per episode.
per episode? So that was about 125 mil they were given. Plus, they also extended how much they actually
Yeah.
had. Because I'm sorry, whenever you hear a project with Steven
Budget.
Spielberg and Tom Hanks, what are you going to do? You're going to give them more money. But
Is that a pretty good budget, I guess, for an
it's
episodic?
it's what made this one of the most expensive miniseries ever made. Like this was a very expensive miniseries for the time.
Yeah, 12.5. Yeah, 12.5 million for an episode.
Per
That's not
episode.
a movie. We're talking an episode.
Per episode.
There we go, man. Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Air Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven for these many months.
The eyes of the world are upon you. Who says that, Pat?
I don't know. I missed that part. Good luck, and let all of us beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
General
General
Dwight D.
Dwight D. Eisenhower.
one of the main Allied commanders for this war, for this battle. And
That's that's gonna do it right there, man,
yes, it
for
is.
episode 1.
Yes, it is.
That was a fun one, man. That
Was
was good.
That's what I said. And
Big
fans,
tone setter for this.
and that's what I said. I think it's a sense of aspect that you're coming from the movie aspect or the show aspect. I'm coming from the history
Yeah.
of things that it makes it really fun to really study and really enjoy watching. This is something I can sit here and watch all the time. I have no problem with it. I still struggle with names, so fans don't get mad at me. I still struggle with names. It does take me a little bit. Uh, but this is by far one of my favorite episodes of the series.
Yeah.
And episode twos are really just going to get better. So, but fans, thank you for joining us. And fans, you can check us out, J4F Podcast, on Spotify and YouTube. You can also check, or Just for Flicks on Spotify and YouTube. And you can also check us out, J4F Podcast, on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And without further ado, I turn it over to Patty B to take us out.
Yeah, thank you, B Dog, as always. Thank you guys for everything, and be on the lookout for this series of watch alongs we're going to be doing as we go behind enemy lines on our next episode, episode 2, The Day of Days. Be sure to check that out. But like always, remember, we do it just for flicks.